So you're looking for a file, but you can't remember the name. Stick around to learn how grep can help you out.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to more of the LPIC 1 Linux Administrator. That's right, we're talking about grep. And Dawn, I have to say, what are the goals for this episode?
All right, well, what we're going to do is learn about how to leverage grep as a search utility for finding files. More importantly, finding it based on their file contents. And we'll see a few different command line modifiers we can use to change the way that grep behaves so that we can search across many different directories and even use regular expressions to be able to find exactly what we're looking for.
So Dawn, I've actually, and I'm sure our viewers have seen you use this a couple of times. You've even talked about it a little bit. How is this going to be different than from maybe some of the stuff we've already seen?
All right, so we did actually have a whole episode on grep that was filmed a while back on egrep and fgrep, right? So doing searches for fixed strings and doing searches for regular expressions. Those were all designed to search for text coming from some place, right? So we were usually taking text from another command or something like that and feeding into grep to look for it. But in this episode, what we're going to focus on is another variation, or rgrep, or grep-r. Grep-r and rgrep are the same thing. The rgrep alias isn't necessarily on every system, so I've kind of gotten in the habit of just always doing grep-r, which allows us to recursively search across a hard drive or folder series, whatever it is that we want to search across, to find files based on their contents. Now, in the opening, Wes mentioned, do you want to find a file and you can't remember the name, right? I know that I can use utilities like find to find a file based on its name. But if I can't remember the name, it would be nice to search based on the contents, what's in the file. And that's what grep can do. We've kind of already seen it with our commands, but in this episode where it's different is we're not just searching one file. We're searching tons of files, hundreds, maybe even thousands of files looking for a particular string. If you've ever been tasked with having to do e-discovery, like if the attorneys call down and say, hey, we need every file that references this account number. Well, the file name could be who knows what, but you need to search across all those files now to see if that account number shows up inside of them. And that's where rgrep comes in really handy, performing a recursive grep across a large quantity of files.
Now, we've seen in other episodes as well where you've used something like maybe cat and you've piped that into grep.
Sure.
How would we do something like that recursively, though?
Yeah, so that's a big difference. When we want to search for something in a single file, it's easy. We just make it output on our screen somehow and then throw that over to grep and it searches. But you can only do that for one file. Well, I'm gonna retract that statement because I could use the cat command and then provide like 1,000 different file names and pipe that into grep. But that would take a while. I'm not going to type out 1,000 different file names, so maybe it was one or two. So instead, we can use grep with the -r tag, the recursive tag, to say, look in this folder and look across all the stuff that's in that folder. And then grep itself will handle gathering all the file names and searching based on it. So as long as I have a good file system hierarchy, I'll be in good shape. So like here in my home folder, I'm going to get into my documents folder right here, okay? If I want to find the instances that Mina Harker's name is mentioned in Dracula, I think that's been kind of our default search so far, then I could come in here and I could do a cat of Dracula, and I could feed that into grep, and I could look for Mina, right? And so when I run that, it's going to do that search. It's going to look, and there's all the instances in that single file, okay? But if I want to search across the entire contents of my home folder, that's a different story. I'm going to bump back up to my home folder. And this time, I'm going to run that search, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently, okay? I'm going to get rid of cat, because I'm not catting a single file or even multiple files anymore. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say grep-r, or you can do rgrep, but remember, I'm in the habit of grep-r because rgrep is not an alias on every distro. And then I'm going to tell it where I want to search. I need to tell it what I'm searching for first. This is the opposite of find. With find, you have to tell it the path first and then what you're searching for. With grep, you have to tell it what you're searching for and then the path. It can be a little confusing, as evidenced by the fact that I just messed it up. So I'm going to search for Mina, and I'm going to put Mina in quotes. I don't actually have to right now, but there are times where your search string and the path can get blended together. So I'm in the habit of putting quotes around it to avoid that problem. So these are best practices that I find make these commands a lot more effective. So I'm going to put that in quotes, and then I'm going to tell it where to search. I want to search my home folder. Now, because I did a -r, it's going to search everything inside of my home folder, all the subdirectories and so on, and I'm going to run that, and there we go. Now, I got a lot back. I got more than what I got back a moment ago, including this giant wall of text here. What is going on? Okay, well, what is happening is it searched more than one file, and one of those files must have been some kind of binary or something that it went into. This is some kind of Chrome extension that has a ffTranslations.js, some JavaScript, right? So I got a hit on a completely unrelated file. But if I scroll up, I'll see where it found Dracula.txt. There's all those instances right there, and I can see everything that we would have found before. So we do need to be aware that this is going to catch multiple files, and that's where limiting the directories that we search can be kind of handy. It even turned up my Vim history, and so you see some of the search and replace commands that I was issuing in Vim way back when we filmed the Vim episode. I've forgotten about that. That was days ago, right? So it's still here, though, in the history, and grep was able to find that.
I've noticed, Don, as you're typing those in, you're using an uppercase M to find Mina. Now, is this something that's case sensitive? I know a lot of things, and most things in Linux are case sensitive, right?
Yeah, so when you do a search like this, it is case sensitive by default.
Okay.
Right. So let's say that I wanted to search for Mina, like I just did, but I want it to be case insensitive. All right. Now I'm a little worried about my search because I turned up so much stuff in that last one. So let me get into my documents folder. I'm just going to search from within documents this time. So I'll make it a little bit smaller. So when I do my grep from in here, if I do grep-r and I search for Mina and I look in /home/documents, or actually I can just say / because I'm already in that folder. So now it's going to search, and it is case sensitive, just finding capital M Mina, right? If I want to search for a case insensitive thing, right, I've got two choices how I can do this. If it's just the M that I'm worried about, I'll usually do a regular expression, right? If you want to do a regular expression, you could come in and just stick square brackets around that M and add a comma lowercase m. Now it's going to look for Mina, and I've got a range for the first character, which could be a capital M or a lowercase m. And when I do that search, now it's going to find both. Now in my file, those kind of turned out the same, but I'm going to create one more file real quick. I'll just call it test.txt, and let me add some text. This is some text. Look at my terminal. This is not Mina Harker. All right. Now, the reason I'm typing it this way, notice how I've got Mina right here with a capital M. Look at the word terminal. It has Mina as well with a lowercase m, right? So now I've got a little bit of case insensitivity. And so now when I go and do this search, it's going to search across and see how it found my test.txt as well. And it found Mina with a lowercase m, and it found Mina with a capital M inside of that file. So it was able to locate it. Now that's one way to do it. An easier way that doesn't require a regular expression is, instead of doing a regular expression, I could have just said RI. I does a case insensitive search, right? The challenge here is the M could be capital or lowercase, the I, the N, the A, they could all be capital or lowercase, right? And that might have some results that I don't want. But in the case of searching for Dracula, that would actually have some positives. Dracula in the text sometimes is written in all capitals, sometimes it's capital D, sometimes lowercase d. So when I do that search, it's going to pull all those up. And did I not limit that? That really went crazy. I didn't limit it. So let me search back in my documents. There we go. So it's going to find it, and see how we got right there, Dracula in all caps, not just the first letter. And so that's a much more robust search than what I was doing before. But just remember RI, R is recursive, I case insensitive, or just -R and then use a regular expression to catch the letters that you want in mixed case.
I actually caught one there that, without terminal. It was criminal. It was in there, and it had it as well. So speaking of that is a lot of text on it. Is there any way that maybe you could limit it to maybe by file name?
Sure. So the search that I'm doing here, it's finding files that have Mina in it, and it's returning every line in that file that contains Mina. Well, I don't normally want to see the line. I don't care about the line itself. I just want to find the files. If I'm doing e-discovery, I need to find every file that mentions this account number. I don't need to see the line in the file. I just need to know the file name. So when I do this search, I normally add one more thing to it, which is -RIL. Okay, now I'm going to do a case insensitive search. I'm just looking for Dracula, and I'm going to go ahead and widen this one now. I can go ahead and search against the entire hard drive if I want, right? I'm going to search the entire hard drive for any file that contains the word Dracula, case insensitive, and then the L, just list the file name. That's all I want. I just want the file name. And so when I run that, oh shoot, permission denied. So let me redirect my errors into /dev/null so we don't have to see all that. And now it's going to run, and here we go. I'm starting to see some files come back. Okay, looks like I got some. It may seem odd, some of these that come up, but like a spelling dictionary just came up. Dracula must be a dictionary word, right? Or part of some bigger word. I didn't expect to see that one. The locate database came up, which is indexing all the files on my hard drive, so I expect that. The Vim runtime list, I didn't expect to see that one, so I don't know what's in it. I would be kind of curious to see its line. This search is taking a lot longer than I thought. This search is going to take longer than find because find was just looking at the file name. Here it's actually going into the contents of each file and looking for this word. So this search can take a long time. Let me break out of that, and I'm going to just stick it to my home directory here instead to make that a little bit shorter. There we go. And now I am hitting those Chrome extensions, which flooded my screen with garbage a moment ago. Now it's much more manageable though, right? I can see, oh yeah, that's Google's cache. Let me just ignore that. Oh, my bash history, let me ignore that. And I can start scrolling up and, oh, here in my documents, I've got these 2 Dracula files. Those are the ones that I care about, right? And if we use something maybe a little bit more specific, something that's not as likely to come up in everything that we do, like Harker, now I get less files. Well, boy, those Chrome extensions, I'm curious what's in those things. They seem to be hitting everything. But I can see my test.txt, dracula.txt with a capital D, with lowercase d. We find those. And this is much more reasonable amount of input to handle. So very powerful way to go and find files. I don't need to know the file name. I need to know the contents inside of it.
So there's obviously a lot of bells and whistles to grep here. Are there any other features that might be useful to the viewers?
Maybe. Like what I've shown you so far, these are kind of the main one, the main use case scenario. I can now, or you can now even with grep, find files based on the contents that are in them. But sometimes you might want to find files based on the content that's not in them. So for example, let's say I've got 15 files and I want to search across them for the ones that don't have a particular string. So for example, we'll use Dracula. Wes and I learned earlier that Mina, her name changes in the book, right? I can't remember what her original last name was. That's it. It was Mina Murray. Yep. And then like halfway through the book, I guess she gets married, her name changes to Mina Harker, right? So maybe it's my job to go and this person has changed their last name, so I need to go and edit my employee files to change the last name. Okay, so I might want to do a search for Mina, but I want to find any of the files that don't include Harker. So in other words, that don't have the new name. I might want to search for a string that isn't there. It's not a common use scenario, but it's one that could be useful. To exclude a string, you would use -v. So if you look at grep's man page, so if I do like a man grep, and I will just search for -v, whoops, that is -V, there we go, -lowercase v, invert match, inverts the sense of matching to select non-matching lines. So this is a way that we can exclude text. Show me every line that doesn't include Dracula or something of that nature. So for example, if I take a look at that test.txt file, so I've got the word Mina in 2 different places, and I've got one line that doesn't have it. I could do a grep dash, I don't need to do a -r if I'm searching against a single file, but I could say like vi, so I'm excluding and going case insensitive, looking for Mina, and I'm just going to search that individual file like that. And so when I run it, see how I only get the one line back? This is some text. It excluded the other 2 lines because they had the word Mina in them. Or if I had actually looked for something different, like the word look, now I get the other 2 lines. I've excluded that one. So I'm kind of inverting the way that grep works. It's not the most incredibly useful thing on the planet, but you'd be surprised. You'll find some use case. Oh, well, I can give you an example. Let's say I want to look at SSH's configuration. SSH's configuration is stored in /etc/ssh/sshd_config, right? And if I take a look at that file, there's a lot in there. Well, notice that not every line is actually read. See how there's lines here that start with a pound symbol, right? That means those are commented out. So I might say, hey, I want to see every line or every line from here. So I'm going to grep, and I'm going to look for, I'm going to exclude, and I don't need to do case insensitive on this one because I'm going to exclude pound symbols. I don't want to see lines that have a pound symbol, just show me the lines that actually take effect. And I'll look inside of /etc/ssh/sshd config. And when I get that back, now I'm only seeing the lines that actually do something. And there's some empty spaces that didn't have pound symbols. Apparently these are just for making it look pretty. But this really helps me get to the brass tacks of it. Like, what is SSH actually configured to do? And not bother me with the other 1,000 lines of text that's in there. And I can see, oh, password authentication is turned off. This system only does certificate-based authentication. So that's an example where we might use the -v option. And if we make it recursive, we can pull the same thing across multiple files. So notice how SSH loads this subdirectory right here, sshd_config.d. So that folder contains multiple configuration files. And so I might do a grep-rv. So I'm going to make it a recursive search through that folder, excluding pound symbol lines. And then I'm going to point it to that folder, which I didn't do the best job of copy and paste on this one. But there we go. And so now it's going to search every file in that folder, which is apparently empty, and then return the ones that don't have a pound symbol. I should have checked to see if the folder was empty first. Apparently it is. But that's an example of where we might use that. Yeah, it's empty. So where we might use that to be able to look at configuration. Not as useful as the other type of search, but just remember -v inverts the search.
All right, a lot of power in grep and helping you find those files. Don, what are some of the key takeaways for our viewers?
All right, well, in this episode, we learned how to use grep, which we already knew how to use, but this time we learned how to use it recursively to search across a hard drive to find files based on their contents, not their file name. We learned how we can use regular expressions to be able to change things like case sensitivity. We also learned about the flag to make it a case insensitive search. The search is still, it's a sensitive search, but it's just not case insensitive. So we can do that. We also learned some of the variations that we can apply to it, like inverting the match to find files that don't have text versus files that do have particular text.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that's all for this episode, but not for the series. Keep in mind, we got a lot more coming in the LPIC 1 Linux Administrator, so stay tuned.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.